That was not one of my questions. Have 10, but we have pickup truck that you don't do. Correct.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is Monday, March 4th, 2024. This is a special budget workshop meeting, budget number 4 of the City Commissioners of Rehoboth Beach. We're live at City Hall Commissioners Room, second floor. I'd like to call this meeting to order exactly 2 o'clock p.m. Instead of calling roll call, I'd just like the record to indicate that present are Commissioners Tony Sharp, Patrick Gossett, Tim Bennett, Bunky Markert, and Mayor Stan Mills. Commissioner Chernowski and Commissioner Preston are both absent. Therefore, we still have a quorum and are able to formally conduct business today. I have not received any correspondence relating to agenda items. Nope, Ann verified that. I do want to thank everybody for being here in person. Those that are here in person, that will be given appropriate times to comment on our discussions and give us input. Also want to thank everybody watching virtually. And reminder that the support documents, the documents that we have in hand are embedded in the agenda for you to look at. Go to the city website, click on the appropriate date in the calendar within the portal, and you should be able to see the same documents that we have in hand. With that, the purpose of today's meeting is to discuss a draft budget for fiscal year 2025, including capital improvement program as presented by Interim City Manager Evan Miller, to include but not limited to the following departments. Expect today to go over police, dispatch, beach patrol, bandstand, and communications. And then later, after that, I expect we will be talking about possible additional revenue increases to property tax and wastewater rates. Lastly, we'll end with a presentation on a draft fund balance policy. And with that, I'll turn it over to the city interim city manager, Evan Miller.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners, and members of the public. Before you, or included in the agenda is a support document, which is there's actually 2 support documents. First support document is the FY 2025 budget worksheet, again, for meeting number 4, which is today, March 4th. There's also a second document included in the agenda, which is the changes document that I had mentioned last meeting. And this document, I'll start with the changes document. That highlights the changes that were made from meeting number 2 to meeting number 3, which I had gone over at the last budget meeting. And new in this document are the changes from meeting number 3 to meeting number 4. I'll briefly touch on those. In the general fund operating budget, we have received word from the state of Delaware that they're now moving towards a 27% increase in health insurance. We had budgeted 17%, but the word now is 27%. So we have had to adjust health insurance costs in the respective departments. So you'll see that we have updated those figures in the general fund, the water fund, and the wastewater fund. Also in the general fund operating expense, we've put back in the contributions which were requested at the last meeting. That's $395,000 total. And those contributions were the contributions that were requested from the fire company, the Historical Society, Main Street, and library. Thank you. We've also updated the payroll taxes for the finance department. And then finally, in the wastewater fund operating, we had a slight change to the sludge hauling costs based on recent discussions with the Public Works Director and Sussex County. So those are the changes from meeting number 3 to meeting number 4. As you had mentioned, Mayor, the departments that we plan on covering today are the police department, dispatch, beach patrol, bandstand, and communications. If there are no questions, I would like to just briefly touch on the budget document as it's presented today. Again, looking at the FY 2025 budget worksheet, meeting number 4, support document. On page 2, this is the page after the table of contents, you will see that the budget as presented today, we are reflecting a deficit of $4,657,322. We have included those proposed revenue increases. Again, property tax going from 6 cents per hundred to 8.5 cents per hundred. Parking meter rates to $4 from $3. An increase in parking permits, roughly 30%. An increase in rental tax from 6% to 7%. And we've also included the wastewater metered sewer increasing 21%, as well as the 28%. Proceeding a little bit further down the budget, further down on that document, so you'll see if you incorporate all of those proposed revenue increases, the budget deficit is now $530,000. Moving on to the expense reductions, personnel, again, the commissioners requested at the last meeting that we remove those from the expense reductions, but that we at least list them there. So we've included those just so you have an awareness of that. And so you will see that we also have proposed, if you retain the 80/20 health insurance coverage, that could be a savings of roughly $245,000, which would bring the budget deficit down to $482,861. Also had some discussions with Jean, the Human Resource Administrator. There could be some consideration to budget for 15 seasonal police. We are currently budgeting for 20, and I think we've typically budgeted around 20, but it's very difficult to actually hire 20 seasonal police. So we think 15 may be a little bit more practical. I think last year there was 13 seasonal police that we were able to hire. So that's another consideration at a savings of roughly $47,516, which would bring the deficit down to $435,000. And then the final expense reductions would be the contribution. So the fire company, library, historical society, and Main Street. Again, that would bring the deficit for the budget, if you eliminate those contributions, to $40,345. That summarizes the budget before you. If there are any questions, I can entertain those questions now. If not, we will dive into the 5 departments that we have before us today.
I'd like to stay on this page for just a
Sure.
second. Say again, Evan, where did you want to go?
Next, I was just going to start touching on the 5 departments that we had.
Okay.
Yeah.
From the agenda.
Yes.
Yes. Mayor, just as part of process, the contributions, are you anticipating some additional substantive conversations, or is it more a vote in your mind coming up?
I was anticipating more of a vote with associated conversation, and that was intended for the budget meeting number 5, which would be the morning of March 15th.
Correct.
Okay.
And I believe all those agencies have been told that that's when our next conversations would be.
Okay.
So wasn't entertaining. We could certainly talk about it today because it falls within.
I wasn't lobbying for that. I just wanted to make sure that I was on the same page about how you want to roll this out just over today and the next meeting.
Okay.
Because I'm still operating under the premise that,
Wait, what? Sorry. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner.
I'm still operating under the premise that none of these contributions are yet a done deal in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And I think everybody's been aware of that from the beginning of the budget discussions. And the positions, the personnel positions, I just want to be clear that at the moment, those are all still intact. They are not currently on board, but they would be potential hires if the right candidate is found.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And I guess my expectation has been that we would analyze the entirety of the budget maybe but for the contributions and do them last. Because, just because. So do you want to go anywhere further on this page?
I don't think so, not at the moment, unless someone else does.
Just one, I think we talked about this before, but all of the positions outlined, we have job descriptions for each of those positions.
If we don't have the job descriptions, we're working on the job descriptions.
Okay. And is it at some point in time, not during budget discussions, but could we see a fleshed out org chart that shows these positions?
Yes, once we figure out the budget and for sure which ones are going to make it, we will have an org chart in our budget. We will have a completed one.
Because at the time, am I right or wrong? They're all making it with the exception of a potential 15 seasonal police versus 20. Is that right?
That is my recollection of we have authorized all of these positions to be included as part of the budget. Right.
Yeah, that's not up in the air as far as I'm concerned. I just want to see if anybody else feels like it's up in the air. And while you're thinking, I'd like to have a confirmation from the chief. If we go down to 15, I'm sure you've been consulted on this. This would properly resource us if you filled all 15?
Thanks, Chief.
Good afternoon. 15 is what I think I can get it, and the reality is, if we could get 20, that would be great, but 15 is more reasonable. We haven't been there until we address the housing situation. You're just not going to see those numbers.
And who's addressing the housing situation?
I think we're all working on it as well as can with our local representatives, state officials, as well as Evan and others.
But that's nothing that we can influence or impact?
Not yet, but well, you can. You're a commissioner, absolutely, and all that.
But I don't have
think it's
anything
reached
to
you. You don't have
react to,
anything,
right.
no, not
Nothing
yet.
to resolve this year.
Oh,
Correct.
okay.
Yeah.
Because what I don't want to have happen is that you get an onslaught of good candidates and then have to be in a position where I don't have the budget to hire 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 additions.
I would love to have that predicament, but I don't see that happening.
You don't see, that's not the
I
reality?
just don't see the applications coming in. We're spending more money on recruitment and going out to other
Okay.
schools and just not seeing it, as I mentioned previously,
Yeah.
that some departments have closed out their seasonal program altogether.
Yes, thank you.
All right, all right. Jay, you have something? You have to come up.
Jay Legree on Prospect Street. How many did we end up with last summer? What did we go through with?
13.
I was going to say, we hired 15 and went down to 14 quickly, and the season basically averaged 13.
Thank you. Evan?
Thank you, Mayor. Just one thing I want to clarify as well. So as you look on the document that you have on the screen, that's the second page of the support document for the budget. So we have 2 options that we've included for revenue increases. One is the wastewater metered sewer from $14.70 to $17.79, which reflects a 21% increase. The other option, which was discussed at the last meeting, was increasing from $14.70 to $18.81, which is a 28% increase. The impacts of the expense reductions are a reflection of the balance position at the 21% increase, not the 28% increase. And I just want to mention that the 21% increase approximates the rate that the Abrams study presented for FY 2025. So again, using that 21% and then starting to calculate in those expense reductions, those are the figures that are depicted on the far right column, not the 28%.
So it'd be like 200,000 if we went with the 28%?
Correct. So that difference between the 728,472 and the 530,722.
Well, while we're there, do we want to discuss that? I favor going with the 28% because that's what the Abrams Group conveyed, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago?
I think it was a little more.
And it's what we have announced consistently over the years that's coming this way for this year. Anybody want to argue one route versus the other?
Mayor, could you just elaborate when you say we have consistently communicated this?
Well, not as good as we could have, but we have mentioned several times that there's going to be a doozy of an increase.
Do we have any idea what that translates to per household as an average?
I think you did that.
Yeah, we're figuring that, monthly, people, most of our households, I think we did a water study, we found most of them were doing 5,000 gallons or less. So if you're taking your 5,000 gallons and multiplying it out, you're talking about, maybe a few $100.
Speak up a little bit, I'm sorry, and the mic. Speak up a little bit, thanks.
Basically, the difference between 1881 and 1470 times 5,000 would give you a pretty good estimate.
Somebody do the math real quick. You have a chart, Jay?
Jace.
I'm a typical water user. I use 40,000 gallons a year. Right now, I'm paying $712.20 a year. If you go up 21, I'll be paying $835.80, and if you go up 28, I'll be paying $876.60. So there's not a real big difference between the 21 and the 28.
But it's 150,
Yeah, about that. No.
about 150 up to the
No.
28%.
Oh, I'm sorry. At 40K, yes, that's true. But 21% is $835.80. 28% is only another $50
But from your 712, from where it is
for
now.
my 712, which is what
about
I'm doing now.
Right, it's about 150.
Yeah, so
yes.
it's a kick.
That's
I mean,
50
it's
cents a
kick, all
day.
right. Thank you, man. Thank you.
And Jay, that was your annual, correct?
That's my annual. I worked it out for 100,000 gallons and 600,000 gallons if anybody's interested. But and those are commercial that pay every month. So they would be a little bit different because they pay their ready to use every month. But yeah, that's what I worked out for
I'm
a
sorry,
year.
but let me clarify. How much of an increase is that per household from going from 21% to 28%?
At 5,000 gallons, it's $247.
$247 on an annual basis?
Yes.
No, quarter.
Well,
5,000 gallons.
I mean, you're talking about a $20.55 a month increase times 12 months.
$20.55 a month.
So you're talking about somewhere 247, 250.
Okay, okay.
And we're billed on this 4 times a year, correct?
Residential, 1-inch meters are billed that way. The,
Okay. But the
larger
majority of
me-
town is billed quarterly.
Oh, yes.
Okay, just want to make sure I'm right.
So it's an additional 250, not 150.
Yeah, I mean,
No, I want to know overall for the year, what am I paying? What's the increase doing for the year?
What is the increase?
Right.
On an
If I'm
annual
paying
basis?
712 now, like Jay said, he said at 28%, he's paying
But this is-
876.
We're not fooling with the ready to use.
$164.
talking about the meter rate.
I got more helpers here. I don't know what to do. We're not, if we're increasing the ready to use, I didn't calculate it.
There's a $4.11 difference between the 1470, 1881. So multiply that times 5,000 gallons, you get $20. Then 12 months. If you take it out for 12 months, it's about $247. So it's going to be depending on usage. I mean, some people use more, but you can, I think, fairly say, we had a lot of customers when we did the study that were using less than 5,000 gallons a month. So I would say it's fair. You could say $200 to $300 range is typical
For the year.
for the year.
Yeah, but we were trying to ascertain the difference in, aren't there at least 2 figures that we want? The rate you're paying now, the rate you will pay if we go to 21%, and the rate from now to the rate at 28%.
Right, former Commissioner Legree did that.
But I was only using 40,000 a year, and Bert's figuring, I think you said
60,000
5,000 a
a
month, so
year.
he'd be figuring more,
Yeah.
Jay's, were annual costs?
annual.
Annual.
And I think as I recall from when we did the utility study, that 40,000 a year was fairly in the middle somewhere. So I'm just guessing.
So,
And we're not touching ready-to-serve rates.
Tell me your name in relationship to the city.
I'm Debbie Angus. I live here permanently, and I'm a resident at 58 Columbia. I don't know how many times you shower in a day, but when you have a household of 5 people, you're talking a total, I mean, I think you need to come up with a better way of analyzing how much per household that is really going to change the cost. Because I can tell you right now, I go through more than 40,000 gallons in a year. I have 3 daughters. That doesn't, you know. So I think you've got to be careful on how you're trying to figure out how much money people are going to be increased by going from 21% to 28%. And I know I know there's probably only about 300, I don't even know how many people live here permanently, but there are more people coming into town on a regular basis than ever before, as we all know, never mind the rental properties. So I think you got to be careful when you take one person as opposed to everybody.
Well, I'll tell you, when they did compiled some demographic statistics, I mean, the average household in Rehoboth of a residence was less than 3. So, you know, if you do have 6 or 7 people, obviously that's going to increase your rate significantly. But we're looking at averages, I thought, and if we are for that household with, you know, we know there's probably not been much change since we did the study years ago on usage, and we were shocked, I was, to find out how many households use less than 5,000 gallons a month. But there are others that, you know, if you have a large family, your rates are going to be impacted, and you could be paying $500 or $600 more a month if you have a large household. I mean, a year.
Yes. Yes, because this is by usage.
right.
So, yeah, okay.
So am I, the question of that, 21% would go up $3 from 14 to 17, $3.09 per gallon, basically?
Per
And then if we
1,000
went 28%, it would go up $4.11 per gallon.
Per 1,000 gallons.
Per
And
thousand.
that's based on usage, obviously.
Or the gas.
Well, it's about $1, yeah. But if going back, again, on the 40,000, this is as an average, if you will, that's like an increase of 45 cents a day based on a full year. And while we're there, if I may, Bert, could you remind, we're talking about metered sewer.
Yes.
Define for me who in our areas who would this affect, just to remind us all, of metered sewer?
Metered sewer would only affect the residents of Rehoboth Beach because we're the only ones that are on a metered sewer basis. We use the number of gallons of water and apply that to our sewer rate that we establish.
Right.
People in communities of North Shores and Dewey Beach and Henlopen Acres who share the plant, they pay as a community on a cost allocation basis. In other words, what it costs to run the plant based upon the flows that go to that plant. So Dewey Beach currently is, I think that district is using more percentage-wise than the city of Rehoboth, but they have a different billing system. We're the only ones on a metered basis.
But these increases, per se, would be extended to those other individuals by volume of wastewater treated?
What would impact an increase for these other people will be higher operating costs at the plant facility, because we're looking at what it costs to run the entire plant and that includes debt service. But we have a separate percentage for debt service. It's 42% that the county is paying. But just talking about strictly the operating costs of the plant, they were going to be paying based upon the percentage it flows. Now, there's some good news in that the Rehoboth percentages are dropping. So we are getting more out of those communities than we have in the past. But they don't have metered sewer. They have, the county bills them on a flat rate quarterly basis per EDU.
But those rates of treating sewage outside of the Rehoboth downtown or the Rehoboth proper is based on usage or flow?
Well, it's based on the operating costs of the sewer business. So, if just as an example, let's say it costs $1 million to run the plant, Dewey Beach uses 43% of the flows. This is a little overly simplistic, but they'd use $430,000, and we would bill them for that $430,000. And then they can bill their customers any way they want, which currently is on a flat rate basis because those communities don't have meters.
And this, the two figures there, the 593, 250 based at the 21% increase, that is additional revenue realized based on the usage of the current 1470 this year or past? That's
well,
just the...
what we're using, when Jay and I just came up with our numbers, we're assuming that there's 5,000 gallons per household, and so that $246, $250 rate is based upon average usage. Is that answering your question? But as the lady who just spoke stated, she has large households, so she's going to use a lot more. She's going to have a lot more than $250. She's probably going to be more in the $500 to $700 range annually.
Okay.
And I just want to get clear, on the ready to serve, those rates will be the same?
We didn't change those rates,
Okay.
but you have the power to do that if you
Not
want.
suggesting that we do, just wanted to make sure that they're
No,
staying
we
the
just,
same for this
we left
discussion.
them the same.
Mhm.
So the net difference between 21% and a 28% increase is about $200,000. All right. Do we want to move
Yeah.
on, or do we want to try to resolve this?
I'm sorry, what's your question, Mayor?
Do we want to move on and come back to this, or? do
No,
we
I
wanna-
got that.
Would we like to try to resolve this now?
Resolve between the 21 or 28%?
Mm-hmm.
I'm in favor of 28%.
I would also agree with that, with the news we just received of health costs going from 17% to 27%. That's what you said, Evan.
7%.
Okay.
I'm at 21.
I'm gonna see how the numbers come out.
We can't hear you, Bunky.
I said, I'm gonna wait to see.
What are you waiting
I
on?
mean, is this the only other adjustment we're gonna make, or what?
Well, according to the agenda, we're going to be looking at wastewater rates and property tax. Now, if you want, we can defer to the end,
Yeah.
but we've got a majority right now.
Mr. Bennett, my thought process is the 28 based on the increase in health costs, but yours, 21, is what's your reasoning behind that?
I guess I would agree with Commissioner Markert that perhaps we should look at some of the other things we plan on increasing as well. But I think when I look at what else is down the road, we're looking to put a significant burden on our taxpayers. And so the less we do to that, I think the better, in my opinion.
Well, we'll come back to it. Next.
So there are no further questions on that page of the budget worksheet. We'll move forward with presenting the 5 departments that we had included in the agenda. First, I would like to, communications is last on the bulleted list, but I'd like to talk about them first, and then we'll proceed with the rest of the departments as listed. So for communications, that department begins, the budget for that department begins on page 12, page 13 of the PDF. So in communications, as presented before, and again, as highlighted in that cover page, we have included a part-time communications specialist. So we are still fine-tuning that job description, but again, we're looking for somebody who's a generalist who can do just about any type of communications. Also included is in the printing and forms budget, that is the city's calendar. We also have an additional $3,000 for postcards and then the tree and green infrastructure committee brochure. In memberships and publications, $11,000, that is for Engagement HQ. In contractual services, that is the city website project as well as a freelance photographer that we have contracted with for the past couple of years just to get photos for media, press releases, things like that. Other professional services, we have $9,000. This is just for design and mail prep. And then finally, advertising, $12,000. This is for magazine advertisements that we put out.
And the 22,000 increase in salaries is for what? Specific to Lynn?
That is for, yes, our communication specialist.
Because she's adding more hours or just getting a raise?
Jean, do you have?
So we only have one person in that department. That is her salary.
Do you have anything you'd like to add, Lynn?
No, not at this time. Maybe just an explanation that we are paying for the website development partially out of the FY24 budget, about $22,000 from this year's budget, and then about $38,000 from next year's. The bulk of the work will be done, of course, next year.
What is the approximate cost of the calendar, including mailing?
Including mailing, about $11,000.
If there are no further questions, we can move on to the police department.
Look, I'm just going to say I'm hesitant about 34,000 for a part-time person right now.
Okay, this is what I want to get clear. I thought we just went over the sheet that showed the additions to staff and said we were not going to eliminate any of those. Is that not what we agreed to?
That's fine. I don't have to agree with it 100%. You know, but you know, that's majority want that. That's fine.
Okay.
No, that's what we agreed to.
I thought we all agreed to it, but now the mayor's saying that he's not in agreement with this 34,000 for communications. I'm just trying to.
Well, me too, because the part of consensus, I thought, was to, at a minimum, be supportive going forward rather than to continue to object to something that we've already agreed in consensus. So I would like to stop going back and forth on things that we've already decided. And if I'm the only one, you can just ignore me.
I think you probably have the consensus. You said police is next?
Yes.
page 13.
Mayor,
Yes, Jay?
can I say one more thing about communications? When we start our stormwater utility, we're gonna have to have a website so that the customers can get on the website and see how much they owe. And that's part of our contract with AECom, and that's gonna come fairly early in the year.
In what,
One of the good news, huh?
Jay, in what year?
FY '25.
Okay,
Because once we sign that contract, they'll be working on it.
okay.
Sounds good. Thank you,
Thank you,
Jay.
Mayor.
Thank you, Jay.
Okay, so next we have the police department. Chief, if you could provide just a quick overview on current staffing. I know you talked about this in detail at the last meeting, but I think it'd be appreciated.
Yes, thank you. Current staffing with the 2 patrol officers we sworn in this morning. Thank you again for that. That brings us up to 19. So we are at our current staff. We are asking for 2 more in this budget to help prepare for the retirements of the possibility of 7 retirements. April 1st of 25, 7 officers could retire. They're eligible. And will all 7 go? I don't think so, but I have 2 to 3 that are looking at it right now, working with the pension and other careers afterwards. So we have to sit down and prepare for that. As we mentioned, we have, with the summer officers not having as many of them out there, so to get the coverage for the bandstand, the farmer's market, and things like that, it will help out with that, and accreditation and all. So that's where we're at right now. Currently, we are at 19. We're looking at least a couple retirements, trying to backfill them, so we're looking for 21 in extra positions to help out with the accreditation, along with special events.
Thank you, Chief.
So Evan, where's the salary for a deputy chief of police and
That-
entry-level police officer? What line are those in?
That would be 501000.
They're in
The
the
salaries, yes.
the total salary line. Thank you.
Next is pension. You'll notice that we have roughly 300,000 there. So the police pension contributions are going up from 11% to 15%. This is a state plan, so again, we're seeing 4% increase in police pension. For uniforms, again, that includes the cost of uniforms for 2 new hires. For minor equipment and supplies, that's 52,000. That includes new and updated firearms. Is largely the biggest chunk of that account. So that's rifles, handguns, and tasers. Medical health and application, that's usually drug testing. Again, 2 new hires that we're accounting for in that account. In conferences and training, that's 28,000. That is for the FBI National Academy, firearm recertification, seasonal officer training, verbal judo training, and other miscellaneous training that we provide. In maintenance contracts, that's 98,000. That would be Axon, Lexipol. So Axon's body cameras, Lexipol is the policy management system. Hard to Beat AED, which is a new program that we initiated this year. So that's just ongoing maintenance for all the AEDs. Evidence tracking program that we have. CALIA accreditation. Magnum Electronics. That's the majority of the maintenance contracts account. And then finally, auto lease, we have 9 police vehicles. We received 3 this year. They range in age from 2018s to 2023s. And then finally, in the capital outlays, we have a replacement Polaris ATV.
Replacement, what, I'm sorry?
ATV. You want to add anything, Chief?
Yes, as far as the capital improvement, the ATV is actually not a replacement. We do have one, is to add one to us for our special events to get around. And with our vehicle fleet, we don't always have enough vehicles for our events, for our officers, so we have them standing at intersections for 6 to 8 hours, holding their post traffic controls for different races and all. So it's to give us to be able to utilize that on the beach as well as that intersection. So, but it's not going to be a really fancy one. It's going to be just some emergency lights on and just moving people back and forth, handicap and things like that during our special events. And the cardiac kinetics, the medical went up a little bit this year just because union contract every other year. All officers get a full physical done, mandated by the contract, as I stated. And those are $700 some a piece for each officer. So that every other year it goes more expensive. And the guns, the upgrades in guns, if you remember last year we did half, so it's the other half that we did last year that we kind of started that program because some of them were over 10 years of age, so they're time to be moved on. I know we're just doing the police right now, but just put things in perspective, under public safety, beach patrol, dispatch, and police all together, if we're looking at the overall budget, it's about 17% of our budget, so I think we're in line as far as trying to keep costs down. That's all I have.
Backing up for a second, you mentioned special events and the ATV, et cetera. Mr. Miller, you mentioned earlier this morning in your report that you were conducting, or did I mishear you, about fee restructuring or just a fee, something to dealing with fees of evaluation or consolidation of, or?
Yes, so I have been in contact with General Code and have pretty much authorized pretty much the development of a fee schedule for the city. What this fee schedule will include is a chart of all our fees and then a reference to the section of the code that includes that fee. In conversations with them, it would have been a very lengthy process, very costly process to go through and actually develop a fee schedule that removes any reference to a fee in the city code and put it into a fee schedule. So for less than $1,000, they are going to put together a sort of chart of fees, which would be, again, a list of every single fee that we have in our code and a reference back to that section in the code of where that fee is established. So it gets us one document with all of our fees in that one document.
And is that a step into evaluation of those fees?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But that would not have any impact on this budget?
Correct.
Okay.
So is that special event fees, so when we close the street for a running race or something? Is that?
Yeah.
Right. And so when the police do come in from different jurisdictions, is it just a gentleman's agreement, or is there money exchanged?
Only to see which, Chamber of Commerce for see which program, when we bring other people in, they pay them directly. If it's a body and detail, presidential protection, we have to teach them and fill out the federal grants, the paperwork and all that, and get them to get reimbursed directly from the federal government and all. But so usually we're handling all the foot races and things like that ourselves as much as we can. And yes, they pay the city, and the city pays us out of regular payroll, taking taxes out and so on. I don't know if that answers the question.
It kind of does, I guess. I'm wondering where I don't remember us discussing some of these special event fees. What area is that under?
When we have a road closure, there's a certain amount. If they need an officer, it's 3-hour minimum, and it's $90 an hour per officer, and $15 of that 90 goes to the city for vehicles, insurance, gas, and things like that. And when there's a special event that needs extra trash cans or something from Public Works, they work that out with the city. I believe that's correct, Evan, to give additional fees for to put out trash cans and things.
But is that memorialized somewhere? Is that what you're
That's what
asking?
that's what I was trying to figure out, is so if I wanted to have an event and I have to close the street and I need police officers and trash pickup, how do we go about charging the individual groups for that?
It's filling out the paperwork through Lynn's office, communications, and then she sends it out to get authorization for the event from the city manager and myself. And then we just decide if there needs extra trash cans and stuff like that, then that gets all the paperwork. If there's additional paperwork needs to go for the manpower or the fees for the trash cans or whatever that case may be, then Lynn sends it out through her office.
And those are the fees, then, Evan, that you just mentioned that you're reevaluating.
Yeah, Lynn, if you could elaborate on that
Sure,
a little bit.
so There are several special event fees. There's an application fee that everyone who applies to hold a special event in the city must pay. It is $50. And then if they need police officers, they are charged based on the number of officers and the amount of time that they employ those officers. There is a public works fee that we charge very rarely for very large events that require additional public works services like raking the beach and special trash pickup. And then there also is a usage fee for the bandstand. So anybody who utilizes the bandstand as part of their special event is charged based on the amount of time they use the bandstand.
The reason I bring it up only is with the increase of what it's costing us from insurance and everything else is, are we charging the proper amount to the outside agencies that come in to cover the cost of the additional police officers and so forth?
Commissioner Bennett, your questioning is exactly correct. This is part of the holistic review that we don't do of our fees. And I keep harping on we need to continue our momentum on parking in April. And I believe very strongly that all the fees that are being put together, those have got to be looked at as well. Right. Because your initial question about how much are these things, they are out of proportion with what they are low in proportion based on what we're offering. We all know that instinctively, yet year after year, we say we need to look at those fees and we don't do it. So I am going to just continue to bang this drum harder and harder until April gets here and thereafter.
Yeah, I think one of the benefits of doing the fee schedule the way that we have now authorized it to be done is that there will be a quick turnaround on it. So I think as we begin these discussions in April, starting with parking, that will be available for us to take a look at. I think, Commissioner Bennett, to your point, a lot of these fees are ones that have not or ever been codified. So there's an opportunity to look at the fees that are more so in place from a policy standpoint or approval standpoint. And if we want to codify some of that stuff, we can certainly do that. But look at the fees, again, holistically.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any fees that are variable enough that they deviate a lot from actual versus what the proposed budget is and stuff like that? I mean, is it somewhat predictable or not so predictable?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm really prepared to answer that question, but I think in some cases the commission has to weigh whether or not it makes sense to codify some of these fees. Maybe there's a separate way to go about it. I mean, I'm thinking back most recently to the parking ordinances that we amended, right? In there, we talk about a service fee, and we codified a service fee. Well, that service fee can change every single year. So maybe in some cases there is a desire to review these fees every single year. In other cases, it might need to be done more so administratively so we can make those changes, on the fly, so to speak, and not have to worry about ordinances and things like that. But I think we can put together a holistic perspective on all of the fees that we charge through the fee schedule and maybe a supplemental document of some of the other fees that are not codified that we want to consider either codifying or leaving alone, but at least evaluating.
And is that something, if we're halfway through the year, we could revamp, yes, or do we have to wait till the following budget year?
We can look at it.
We can enact change.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly, obviously, depending on the fee, there will probably be a time of the year that we need to look at it, like parking. But I think for the most part, it could be changed just about any time, depending on what the fee is.
And this year, we're going to look at them all in April.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, that, again, my expectation is that I will have this document back from the code company in April, and I can make it available to the public and to the commissioners.
So back to the police budget for a minute on the agenda. Am I correct that the story about the increases in the police budget are three primary issues: additions to officer staff, medical, and pension? Those are the three big contributors in my head. Am I missing anything?
I think that summarizes it pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bottom line kind of person. And it's great to go through all this and say, what is this 7,000 or 9,000 or whatever? But the story here for our police department to be properly resourced and have appropriate medical and pension coverage, these changes have got to be made, period. Okay?
Properly resourced, proper medical, proper.
Pension.
Pension. All costs really out of our control. 2 out of 3
Exactly.
out of our out of control.
So one day, maybe the commissioners will flip-flop what we sit here and do for hour upon hour upon hour and go directly to the bottom line of each department and say, what are the 3 major contributors? And if they're out of our control, what are we doing? We cannot just think we can nickel and dime these budgets to death, my opinion. And once we get our fees in order across the board, rental licenses, et cetera, our position may start to improve over time.
Along with that fee schedule, Mr. Miller, is there any, given any thought to, and I don't know if this is in public business, if you will, as opposed to municipal, an overhead cost per department, has that ever been thought about or looked at? Okay.
I don't think so.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions on police, we can move into dispatch. Dispatch begins on page 21 of the PDF or page 20 of the support document. So again, similar to the police department, I mean, dispatch, the big increases here are the salaries, as well as the medical insurance. In terms of the salaries, again, you'll see on the cover page, we included the additional dispatch position. We've also had the dispatch supervisor who has been vacant. So the chief talked about that position, those 2 positions in detail at the last meeting. So salaries have gone up. The medical insurance obviously has gone up. One thing I want to point out, under minor equipment and supplies, we have budgeted $6,850, but we were able to purchase some of that equipment out of this year's budget, so that will be reduced to $1,360. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chief. Travel expense, too, is another, travel expense and conferences and training have gone up a little bit. But that is Tyler Conference for Munis, the Navigator Conference, APCO Conference, so all conferences pertaining to dispatching, fire, EMS, police, dispatch. And then conferences and training would be obviously all of the conference registration fees, but then also CPR and other recertifications that we have. On maintenance contracts, that also has gone up, but that is Delgis, Nixle, Smart 911, and then Priority Dispatch Software. So a lot of the systems that we're currently using, that captures all of those expenses. Do you want to add anything, Chief?
No, just to say that those prices are pretty accurate. We went ahead and got the contracts renewed and all that. So as Evan said, these are contractors and contracts we've been using for many years and that are established and all. So it would be hard put to stop any of them.
And could you just inform me, the one line item, general 911 to be distributed, 35,000 actual for this year, is that just a reallocation of funds, or I think it's 506,300?
I will.
Those are typically grant funds that have.
Grant?
Yeah.
Maybe it's 911 funds. Yeah.
And just a reminder, the actual 24 is through what date?
Ooh. The actual numbers through 2024, I don't think they were updated since the last budget meeting.
No? Okay.
So. Okay, if there are no further questions on dispatch, we can move on to Beach Patrol, which begins on page 24 of the support document, page 25 of the PDF. Beach Patrol, obviously the big expenditure there is the part-time salaries for our lifeguards. Beach Patrol donations expense, we have budgeted $20,000, but that we need to review and probably come down on. In prior years, we budgeted $6,000 and spent $5,000, so we're going to take a look at that. but that we will be reducing. Radios, pagers, and maintenance, we've included that account just for ongoing maintenance of those radios. Conferences, training, and competition, this is for the 40-hour emergency medical responder certification, first aid, CPR, AED certifications, and then any competitions related to registration, fees, travel.
Have you subtracted the lifeguards from Deauville Beach? They are already. Okay.
Yes, it went from 75 down to approximately 70.
Okay.
I might be confused, but was there an endowment for the lifeguards that was given to the city?
No, the city didn't want to have anything to do with the lifeguard donation that was being made. And so basically they're going the route of establishing their own 501c3 and managing it themselves.
Okay.
There was, I guess, depending upon what the portfolio is done at the investment advisor, there was over 300,000 there from the donor, and
Right.
she's working with the with the lifeguard group.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we can move into bandstand unless there are any other questions for the chief while he was here. No? Okay, on bandstand, that is on page 27 of the PDF, 26 of the support document. Bandstand largest expenses here are related to maintenance of the bandstand itself and then the programs. So we have included $5,000 for special events. This is expenditures that we incur as it relates to special events, but we do get reimbursed for those expenditures. Contractual services, we do have a sound technician that we work with, so that is the cost of having him come in and perform those services. We also have elevator maintenance and then ServPro cleaning for the facility underneath the bandstand. Bandstand expenses or bandstand programs, again, that's $125,000 just to continue to provide the quality events that happen at the bandstand during the summer concert series. Bandstand expenses, $90,000. This is painting of the main stage floor, the steps, the side ramps. We also do an annual rust removal and cleanup and paint and do miscellaneous repairs to the top of the bandstand, so the white structure itself. We also need to order some equipment, so stage boxes. We need to repair and replace the old monitors, replace some doors and locks, also procure new wireless microphones, and then also make improvements to electric and sound systems and other maintenance needs. There is a little bit of contingency in this account as well, just to anticipate any unexpected maintenance needs throughout the summer. Just in the event that something goes wrong midsummer, we want to make sure that those summer concert series continue. And that pretty well summarizes up bandstand, unless there are any questions. And
There
that's,
was talk about lighting. Did you say upgrade lighting or anything of that nature?
yes.
I don't, maybe I misread it, but I didn't see anything in the CIP about that. Is that
Yeah, so
covered in?
I spoke with Corey, and I think it made more sense to put that in bandstand expenses, so that has been included in the bandstand
Okay.
expenses account.
Thank you.
And that is all I have.
So ultimately, we still have a deficit that we need to discuss. Carolyn?
Carolyn Diefendorfer, city resident. This is a general question with all the new positions. Have they been put into the budget assuming they're all filled on April 1st? And if so, you got some savings there, because my guess is you don't have offers waiting to go out on some of these things, and, you know, realistically, you're not gonna fill them all on April 1st. So just something to think about.
Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Anything? Debbie? State your name again.
I will. Debbie Angus, 58 Columbia, permanent resident. I've got a question about communications when they're doing, or your bandstand programs that you have. Do we actively go out and look for sponsorships for each one of those events to help cut the cost back? Or have you ever considered doing something like that? Like approaching some company or somebody in the area to sponsor an event? You're looking to cut back on costs. That's one way of doing it. It's just a thought. Another thought, with some of the equipment that the police department needs, have we ever approached any of the automotive places around here to donate some vehicles that we may need for special events or for the beach patrol? They're always looking for things we don't know until you ask. And in some cases, they're willing to do that. It's just a thought.
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't know the propriety of doing some of that, you know?
Well, it's not I mean, it's just basically a sponsor.
Yeah.
That's all.
Thank you, Debbie. Anybody else? Anybody else, members of the public? Jay?
Insurance is eating our lunch. Anytime we cut down, we're gonna have to get it somewhere else. As far as, we're not even, it's not a matter of being a nice guy and holding off on increases. We gotta get it to balance the budget. That's why I was in favor of the 21%, and that's why I congratulated Bert and Henry on not fooling with the ready to serve. I mean, that would have been another hard cut. And the commercialization of anything is always dangerous, and I appreciate the mayor's thoughts about it being proper or appropriate or anything like that. You love sponsors, but the mayor and I have traveled at beaches up and down the East Coast of the United States, and we've seen Coke-shaped signs and all kinds of commercialization, and it just really makes your boardwalk look like trash. And one of the most important things we have in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, is our reputation, is our brand. We have a pristine beach. That's why I hate to see Deauville go. We have a pristine beach. We got a beautiful boardwalk. If you stand on the boardwalk, you can look at the ocean. You don't have to look through somebody selling velvet paintings of Elvis. You can look all the way to the damn windmills, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, you can look far away, and we help those customers who line that boardwalk, because we don't have people out there pushing carts selling hot dogs on the beach. Commercialization is tough. It's a tough thing to deal with, but we're doing a good job of it. And you've made all the hard decisions, so for once I don't disagree with anything. But we've got to start incremental increases, as Commissioner Sharp has been touching around, nibbling at the edges. We gotta start thinking about next year's budget, next year's fees, and on down the line. And we gotta tell our citizens about it too. And speaking of that, Bert, thanks for putting the net position in the support documents. I speak for the thousands of citizens who love that document. So, no, I'm being facetious. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Jay. Francis?
Hi, Frances Kelleher, a resident. I would like to make a general comment, and then I would like to ask if I can make a specific comment, even though it's something you're going to discuss at next week when I won't be able to come.
You're fine.
Okay, so I want to make a general comment, and I listened to all of your budget meetings to date, and I thought there were a lot of thoughtful discussions. And so, pardon me if I'm stating the obvious. I'm accused of that a lot myself. And but I really would like to say this, is that I think the city needs to do more. You do a fine job of all of this, detailed calculations of the expenses and all of that. What I think there needs to be more serious analytical evaluation of the users who benefit from the services. And I know you touched upon it last week, but to me, I'm just going to put three big groups. So the three groups are residents, homeowners, if you will, commercial businesses, and tourists coming into the town. And you did touch upon it last week. It's easy to do the estimates of the metered water and raise my water rates and raise even the commercial people's water rates. But where is, again, the tourism taking getting their fair share of the increases of the costs? So I'm just throwing that out as a general concept that I really would like to see the city start trying to link costs with who are the users of those costs. And that can come in when the stormwater comes. But I'm going to pick on the chief here for 1 minute to say, we have 19 police officers, and I have no problem with the police. But here's the thing. We have 19 police officers because of all the people that come into this town. We don't need 19 police officers for the residents. And that is the honest truth. I think I looked in the Bethany, they have 10 officers. We've got maybe almost twice that now. Where I live in the winter, in the municipality of Bellefonte, Delaware, we have no municipal police officers. Claymont, Delaware has no municipal police officers. If you want, somebody brought up Bridgeville and the Scrapple Festival at one of the meetings. If we didn't have that ocean out there, how many police officers would we need in this town? So I think there has to be consideration and analytical evaluation of what are the costs that really are being driven by the tourist, the people coming into town. And I think they need to pay their fair share, whether it's beach tags or whatever way you figure it out, or ticketing the buses coming in, raising, drop-off fees. I'm not coming with the solution here, but as a homeowner, as a resident, I just think there needs to be more looking at, and especially when people keep bringing up and all the costs we're going to have in the next couple of years. Well, you can't just, to me, keep transferring those increases on the few townspeople. It's just really not right. So, but here's what I came down today to talk about. So if you will indulge me for a minute, and I am going to refer to the charter. And again, please don't take any offense. I know you know the charter better than I know the charter. But I am concerned about the discussions at the meetings in February about the fire company. and I just have a feeling that not all may fully understand the history of the city's relationship with the fire company. So I just want to explain that. I'll try to do it really quickly. I want to refer to the city's charter, section 29. It lists the powers of the commissioners, and if you will, I'll translate that to the responsibilities of the commissioners. Quote, and this is quote from the charter, in the interest of good government and the safety, health, and welfare of the city, its inhabitants, and affairs. Now, the list in section 29 has about 44 different items of what the, if you will, the empowerment is for. And it calls for, for example, essential services such as providing clean water, sewers, et cetera, et cetera. I want to talk about item 28, which is about the fire, and I'm going to read it. To provide for the organization of a fire department and the control and government thereof, semicolon, to establish fire limits and do all things necessary for the prevention or extinguishment of fires, semicolon, and in their discretion to contribute, donate, or give such amounts of money as they may deem appropriate unto any volunteer fire company or companies incorporated under the laws of Delaware or any volunteer fire association or associations maintaining and operating firefighting equipment and service to the city, provided that such contribution, donation, or gift may be made subject to certain conditions and stipulations as to the use thereof as the commissioner shall deem advisable. So history, the town incorporated in 1891, and in 1906, the Rehoboth Fire Company was established. And that was the first thing that the original commissioners, had on their list to do. So since it was only in 1925 that, I skipped something. In 1923, the truck, I'm assuming it was kind of one of the first trucks, was housed in the old town hall. And in 1925 is when the fire company was incorporated as, quote, the Rehoboth Beach Volunteer Fire Company, Inc. And I will say that was a general thing in the state of Delaware because our fire company in the town of Bellefonte, Brandywine 100 Fire Company, actually was incorporated in 1924, a year earlier than Rehoboth. But in 1929, the town of Rehoboth Beach turned over the firehouse to the fire company, and that was, the old town hall. So I want to say the use of tax dollars to contribute to the fire company by the city is appropriate. It is right. It is an essential service that is provided by the fire company and called for in the charter. I would like to suggest a simple way for the city to continue to contribute a quote unquote appropriate amount of money. So that's what's in the charter, an appropriate amount of money to the fire company. While the fire companies in Delaware keep their financials close to the vest, I think they're only shared with the state of Delaware. The fire company knows how many fire calls are within the city limits and what their total number of calls is. And they should be able to calculate fairly simply how much of their operating expenses are spent providing fire service to the city. So to me, that is a simple way to continue to make the contribution. The contributions from the town, again, the whole spirit of the charter is for municipal expenses. And that is said repeatedly over and over and over again in those items for municipal expenses. And so this is considered, and called for in the charter that that this is an expense. But if the commissioners are considering a new way of charging property owners a separate fee for fire protection, I would ask that a fair, and when I say fair, I mean analytical and objective way of determining what that fee should be for a property owner or a commercial property, and that it should not just be arbitrary. And that's kind of what I'm a bit tired of in the city of Rehoboth Beach, is a bit too much of arbitrariness. I haven't mentioned ambulance calls because the fire company should be getting reimbursed for ambulance calls. If the city's going to raise property taxes, I would again like to request that the city ensure fair taxation of commercial property versus homeowners. And I want to say that in the charter, the words, I said this before, I'm sorry, the spirit of the taxes and what our taxes are used for is for municipal purposes. And I don't consider the other organizations that have come before you seeking grants to be in any way, shape, or form similar to the fire department. The library gets funding from the county. The city has just given the library a big source of income. So they have a new source of income. I think the city has given the library enough. The Historical Society, we've given them a building. What is the value of that building? How much would that building be worth if it was rented or sold? So, you know, again, to me, I feel the city gives plenty and enough to the Historical Society. With respect to Main Street, I do not see what of any of their services are essential, and I do not think it's appropriate to spend taxpayer taxes on things that are not essential when we have so many things that are needed and are essential to pay for. So I just, I'm asking you, to please reconsider how you contribute to the fire company versus other organizations. And I'm asking seriously for that there start to be a really fair, equitable assessment of where the expenses, who are the users of the expenses, and that then people are charged appropriately. And again, not keep coming back to the residents. And I'm also really tired of hearing at these meetings about our property taxes being low. Yes, our county property taxes are low here in Sussex. My property taxes up in Newcastle County are twice what they are here, and I know that people in the Beltway have way higher than that. But that to me is irrelevant. It's not about, oh, they're low, so let's raise. No, it's what is appropriate that we pay for, and that's how it should be looked at. So that is what I have to say.
Thank you, Frances. In terms of our proposals, and of course, we've passed a parking fee increase, we've passed a rental tax increase, we're anticipating or looking at a property tax increase and wastewater fee increase. I'm satisfied that we're spreading the burden there. Yeah, we can probably do some more analysis, but it's not all property tax that we're looking at to balance the budget. We're looking at property tax for every property equally. We've looked at parking, which I'll bet you that impacts, what, 95% of the visitors over locals. Rental tax and impacts landlords. And wastewater tax impacts residents certainly, but also our visitors. They're going to pay one way or another through their hotel accommodations fees or rental fees and everything. So I'm satisfied that we're doing a reasonably good job of spreading the burden there. And just to reiterate, Frances said she couldn't be here next week, and she'd asked me at the beginning that we would be doing more discussion next budget meeting 5 on the 15th, 9 a.m. than now. So she asked if she could make those comments now, and I was perfectly fine with them. Does anybody else want to respond or offer anything else at this point?
I just only want to make it clear, clear that I believe no decisions have been made yet on the grants. We haven't made those decisions yet. We need this full picture of exactly what our situation is before making those decisions. So I hear you with what you're saying, and those decisions are yet to come.
Anybody else? And we still have an unbalanced budget. We've got one more meeting on the 15th, budget meeting 5, 9 a.m. And then we're not expected to vote at that meeting. Our votes will be conducted during the regular meeting, 2 o'clock on March 15th. That's when we have to settle on voting on the budget one way or another, because we have a deadline in code. And so therefore, we would have to come to a conclusion with the amount of funding for these agencies, if any, and on anything else.
At the 9 o'clock, Mayor?
The 9 o'clock is the budget meeting.
Yeah, so we'll have to land the plane, so to speak, at 9 o'clock.
I would say yes.
I mean, we can't go into the 2 o'clock still unresolved about the budget deficit. We have to land the plane.
I think we're ready to vote.
Okay.
But it would be helpful if we came out of this meeting perhaps with a little more direction on which way we want to go. In other words, a decision on wastewater fee and property tax. If not, again, like you said, we have to land the plane at the very next meeting without fail.
Well, I guess
The only problem is landing the plane at the next meeting, if we still may not, even with these increases, we still have a deficit, correct?
Well, we also have a rainy day fund. That I don't understand and maybe you don't want to talk about this right now, or maybe you do, but I don't understand having a rainy day fund if we're not ever able to dip into it. Because the way I see this is we're going to have some X dollars of deficit that we're going to continue to deal with at the next meeting.
Let me ask, is that covered by your fund balance and net position policy
That's correct, Mayor.
on how much we need to maintain in there, and that allows us to pull some money out? Would it be prudent then to move on to that
Sure.
and then come back, Tony, to the discussion
Well,
of any additional revenue?
I'm uncomfortable talking about property taxes and wastewater rates, not so much the wastewater rates, because that is a utility. But the property taxes, until I know what is the real number that we are dealing with in this summary page that we have to find, in other words.
Well, then let's move on to the next one, to discuss the fund balance, as you said, to determine whether there's any funds in there that we can suck out.
I think that would be helpful.
Agree.
All right?
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to move on to the next item, which is presentation on a draft fund balance and net position policy. This is something all brand new to the city, correct?
Correct. Thank you, Mayor. So I would say, at least since I have been with the city, almost 7 years now, we have talked about implementing a fund balance policy. And so that's what we have done this year. Obviously, knowing that it was going to be a tough budget year, we were able to really work together, Bert and I, to put together what is called a fund balance and net position policy. So a draft policy is included in the agenda for today's meeting. Again, this is a draft policy that sort of outlines the framework that Bert and I have put together for what we think is important to have as a unassigned balance for both the general fund and for the enterprise funds. So I will try and articulate this as best I can, and then I may turn it over to Bert to further explain. But essentially, what this boils down to is a fund balance policy, net position policy, really outlines what is the framework for the minimum amount of money the city needs to have in an unassigned balance. So anytime we talk about fund balance, we're talking about general fund. General fund is police, streets, building and licensing, all of those types of departments. And then enterprise fund is just water and wastewater. So when we talk about general fund, we're talking fund balance. When we talk enterprise funds, we're talking net position. So the framework that we've put together pretty much says that the city should, at all times, maintain 60% of budgeted operating expenditures. And the 60% really equivalates to roughly 6 months of the seasonal operating expenses. So when we're trying to figure out what is the minimum amount of money that we need to have to operate for 6 months, we thought it was important that we look at seasonal operating expenses. So if we have a terrible season, nobody comes to the city, nobody goes to the beach, nobody pays the parking meters, what is the minimum amount of money that we need to have to operate for 6 months? Again, operating expenditures. In addition to 6 months of operating expenditures, or the 60% roughly, we also think it's important to cover 100% of our debt service costs, again, in the general fund. So that incorporates the 100% of debt service costs. And in addition to debt service costs, we also think it's important to fund 100% of the capital improvement projects for that year. Again, financed with current year revenue. So those three things are the operating expenditures, debt service, CIP, and then finally, what we've added in here is natural disaster funding. So in the general fund, again, streets department is included in the general fund, and so we incorporated roughly $4 million for natural disaster. Our big thinking here was the boardwalk. A number of years ago, we had to rebuild the boardwalk after a natural disaster. I think at the time that cost roughly $5 million. So we have temporarily or tentatively put in a figure of $4 million, which leaves an unrestricted fund balance minimum of $17,720,510. So that is at a minimum how much we believe we need to have in the general fund balance to cover all of those things. If you look at what we have as a total unrestricted amount, we've got available $20,953,732, which leaves an amount in excess of the minimum fund balance of $1,233,222. Again, this is just in the general fund.
Evan?
Yes.
I've got a very bottom line kind of question.
Sure.
The unrestricted fund balance minimum, if that number in the right-hand column were an even 17 million, what would happen to us? Could the answer be nothing?
Nothing.
And in short order, could that $720,510 grow again? The answer is yes.
Yes.
So I bet you can see where I'm going. That we have some level of deficit, if you want to call it that. And to me, I'm looking at, I'm already getting a no from Commissioner Markert.
You're not experiencing a deficit by this calculation. you're not experiencing a deficit by looking at this calculation.
I'm
This
only-
is basically attempting to try to come up with some level of safety.
Yeah,
Because
I know.
none of this is gonna, all these things are not gonna happen.
I know
you
what it is.
Okay. I'm
But
just
the
gonna say-
deficit I'm talking about is on this other sheet.
Right.
That Evan prepared for us initially. So all I'm saying is, someone help me with trying to grasp how we are almost struggling with how to fund the difference on this summary page, when to me, it's looking me in the face. Let me finish.
Can I share my perspective just briefly? We're not experiencing any kind of deficit at this moment. All we're doing is planning. We're planning to operate in the coming fiscal year, and it's prudent accounting, fiscal policy, whatever, excuse me, to basically create a financial plan, and that financial plan should be balanced. The numbers are, it isn't like all this is going to happen. We're going to expend exactly the amount of salaries and the other expenses, and we're not going to, garner all the revenues we propose that we're going to get. But so at the end of the year, I don't know what it is for last year, but we're going to come up with either a surplus or we're going to come up with a deficit, and ultimately that surplus, if whatever it is, that surplus will be added into that number that is on that page right there, that unrestricted fund balance. We're either going to increase it or we're going to deduct from it. I mean, that's going to just happen as an accounting entry, okay? But all we're doing now is planning, and it's prudent planning, and it's justified planning. So don't. There's money there. There is money there, that money will go. It'll roll over into the fund balance.
And I take your point.
Okay.
And based on your point, what are we sitting here discussing?
We're discussing
what?
I think more than anything that we have a means of doing this that's prudent and sensible and all those qualities and justified, and that we're not just going, well, pay that. We're not doing that. We're actually spending a lot of time here talking to one another. We're grilling these folks. We're trying to get some kind of justification, and I think we're doing it. It's a process. But when we finish approving this budget, all we're doing is approving a financial plan.
I understand that.
Okay.
But when the next issues on the agenda are the words property tax, inherent in putting that on an agenda is building anxiety, I think, in some or a portion of our property owners.
Sure.
And if that was not our intent,
again, I mean, I think...
Is that our intent?
No. What I want to say is all those things that Francis outlined are true, okay? And what we try to do is I think what the city has done for a long time is to try to talk about even the three categories that she talked about with regard to, what do tourists pay, what do the businesses pay, and what do the residents pay. And you can't, I suppose you could probably give Bert some time, and he'll come up with a pretty accurate, analysis of what that is. But in terms of us, we don't have that kind of analytic aptitude. We need to kind of justify it in terms of what we consider to be fair and be able to articulate it so I think the public can sort of understand our process and what we're doing.
Can I jump in a second?
Sure,
As I read this, it looks like we've got an excess of 1.2 million.
Yes.
It's got nothing to do with their budget. This is a metric. This is a metric that we're using to say how much should we have set aside.
So you're saying we should have 17 and we have 20. I'm just doing round numbers.
We're saying we have an excess of the minimum fund balance that we've established. And
So is that the rainy day
Doesn't have anything to
fund?
do with your current year's budget. It's just, I think Mr. Markart's doing a pretty good job of explaining what this is all
Oh, I'm
about.
confused.
Well, here's the deal. If we're going to say.
Is that a rainy day fund? That's what we're trying to figure out.
What we need for a rainy day fund is a rainy day.
It's raining today.
No, it
We
isn't.
need money.
No, it is not raining today.
Yes, it
It
is.
is now. It is not raining today. We are operating. We are operating as the city operates. A rainy day fund, I think, would be something like the water tower falls over, and I didn't mean that as a as a pun, but but a catastrophic event happens where we don't have the money for it and we need the money. And we would probably get a loan and we would
Where's
try
the
to
money
do that,
come
but we may need to pay for a big thing. You don't do this for operating. You plan to operate.
Bunky, stop saying the
Okay,
same
okay,
thing over
okay.
and over again, that this is
No, I'm
planning.
sorry. I'm sorry.
What I see here is you've got accounting principles in the general fund that are embedded in a budget special workshop. This is about the budget. Read the agenda. So when you tie these things together, is that or is that not the full picture of what we need to make decisions of what to do with the funding that appears to be in a shortfall position on the summary document that Evan gave us at the beginning of this meeting? Am I making any sense whatsoever?
Can I sum this up a little bit? A fund balance policy, in many, I'd say most cities have a fund balance policy. We reviewed many fund balance policies from other towns around the country and in the state. It's basically protecting the city against ourselves. I mean, it gives you a metric to figure out, and those numbers could change. I mean, but
Bert.
it's only a policy.
Bert.
You got to divorce this thing from your
Bert.
from your budget.
Bert,
Yes.
I want to protect the taxpayers from this city by being able to articulate, do we have the money to not have to raise property taxes, to close the shortfall? And this is a yes or no question. Do not tell me how I'm asking you for what time it is, not how to build the watch.
Well, you can see by looking at the things that were proposed, we raised $850,000 from property taxes in this budget. If you look at the other items, they're user-based fees, and they are over $3 million. So the fact is that the taxpayers pay about property taxes represent about 15% of the city's revenue. So what's fair or not? You're in charge. You can tell me, but I think I would like to say that Assistant Town Manager of Bethany Beach and I worked together, and we're continuing to work on this to address what was just said recently by one of the speakers, is to try to look at what this town would look like with 8 police officers. If we didn't have tourism, we wouldn't need 19 police officers. So we have done some calculations on that. And but I mean, as far as the burden of the revenue in this, I mean, we haven't raised property taxes. We don't tend to raise property taxes every year. And there's a big increase this year because we haven't raised them. But if $850,000 is excessive, you can put on some more user fees. But I mean, we have $850,000 in property taxes and $3 million in other fees. So whether that's fair or not.
I think we're asking is, do we have a checkbook? And what is
You
in
have
it
reserve
that's
mo-
available?
yeah.
That's what is our reserve fund?
Yeah, well, I'd like to say this, is that ideally you want to balance your budget with your current year's revenues. So if you're saying we don't want to balance the budget and we want to go ahead and use our reserves, that would be your choice. But I would think that you'd want to keep the reserves for you know, something for emergencies. And
And
the
I would,
question,
and I just am, I've got to push back because my head is going to explode. And I am going to credit Commissioner Ternowski with having had to say in a meeting, if we don't stop talking in circles and not answering questions directly, my head is going to explode. Because, Commissioner Bennett, say it again. Ask your question again.
We have a checkbook, and do we have money in it, and what is it?
well, we have cash balances, and I think,
And I think we're asking, we have a shortfall, and we're saying rather than raise property taxes, can we use this, I don't care what you call it, rainy day fund, investments we have, whatever it is there money there available for us to use?
well, you have the power to do that, but if you want to go ahead and have expenses in the current year exceed the revenues that you're going to bring in, they'll be reflected on your financial statements. And
Well, that's interesting. However, our role is, what's happening here? Am I speaking
listen
or
to
no?
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
You're pointing, I'm distracted. Now I've lost my
sorry.
train of thought.
Sorry.
Here, can I just,
We have two members of the public that want to say something.
let me just say one little quick thing. If assuming that we approve to increase just take one item, property taxes, and we raised it. I don't even know what the number is, what the increase would be, but let's say we increased it by 200,000, and at the end of the year, we end up with $100,000 surplus. So effectively, we raised it too high. So next year, conceivably, and I'm not saying we would do this or whatever, but we could make it less next year to even it out. Follow me? So we could do that, you know.
Well, yes, and,
You know, because we
and
overshot it. We
pigs-
thought it was going to be this, and we didn't do it.
and pigs can fly.
Well, but
I
no,
mean-
but I'm saying we imposed that upon our residents, and we could give it back. You know, I'm just saying that's a possibility. But looking at this, I don't want people to get confused that we got this big pot of money here for us to do, like, that's like our stopgap. That money is an accumulation of all the surpluses and deficits that have accrued in this city since going back to I don't know how far. You know, and this exercise here to have a fund balance policy is like, well, how much should we have? We could have a whole lot less,
Okay,
and we
let's-
wouldn't be nearly as safe and conservative as
Stop.
okay.
It's my head.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's going to explode.
All right.
Let's just say this is fine with us.
Okay.
And those numbers are fine with us.
Okay.
If that number was an even 17 million, this is where I started a bit ago. If it was 17 million even, where does the other money go? Where does that 700,000 go?
It's assuming that represents that we had a deficit this year and we were short by 720,000.
We are not going to assume.
No,
we
no,
have
no.
a
I'm just saying.
deficit.
Is that what you're asking? I'm just trying to establish.
It was on the front page of the Cape Gazette.
Okay, all right.
That we
No,
have
I'm just
a
saying.
deficit. Give it
I'm
up.
just trying to be clear as to what you're asking. If that's the case, it would be paid for within the current actual surplus of our current fund balance, and it would be reduced by that amount. Because we have 750,000 in there. We have.
That was the
we
question.
have 20 million.
That was the
in there.
question asked 20 minutes ago.
Okay,
Yes. And the answer is yes, we have it.
we have it.
So we are not in a position where we have to talk about property tax increases if we want to access that dollar amount right there.
Right, but we're not gonna budget a deficit, because we would have to budget a deficit if that were the case. By
And if you're-
not increasing the property taxes.
If you were talking to me about accounting principles.
No, I'm just telling you about, Evan is not gonna submit us a budget that's gonna show a deficit. It's a plan. We're not gonna say we're not gonna raise enough taxes this year.
then I don't have any idea what the mayor's going to ask me to vote on shortly.
He's going to ask you whether or not the budget that we come up with is fair and equitable and it's balanced, and do we all agree to it? And I think by the time we're done this process, we can make that determination.
Am I the only commissioner that is totally confused
No,
now
I am
of
too.
what
I
we're
do.
doing here?
So this reserve fund and this general fund are two different things.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I mean-
Basically, I think what we're saying is, do we want to engage in deficit spending? And we'll be engaging in deficit spending if we don't raise enough money to cover our expenses in the current fiscal year.
I say we engage in it in this year because, in my opinion, the lack of facing the reality of not having our city properly resourced with staff that I believe has gone on and been perpetuated year after year after year is our own fault, including mine, having been up here for 8 budgets prior to this one. And now we are where we are, and we must correct this not by eliminating the positions, but by finding other funds to take care of it. And that's all I'm saying is I am fine with these numbers. I believe our accounting, our financial leadership has rightfully been extremely conservative over time.
It's true.
That's how we got in a good position. Right. And I do not see a downside of protecting our taxpayers, not going to them and taking a nominal amount to correct this
we don't
math problem.
Okay.
I'm going to call it a math problem.
I would call it a fundamental financial policy issue.
And the way we need to correct it begins in April. In April, it will be over my dead body if we come out of April and May meetings without a long-range view of parking, fees, anything and everything else that we have, in my opinion, failed to keep pace with the cost of doing business with our tourists, with our events, all of it. That's got to be corrected in my wish list for, we should project it out for the next 5 years.
I think that's good.
And that's all I'm trying to get to.
Okay. But that doesn't, I'm going to stop talking. Okay.
Can I go to the public?
You can do whatever you want. You're the mayor.
Debbie and then Carolyn. Need to come to the microphone, though, and restate your name, please.
If I could just make one correction real quick, Mayor. So we have in the unrestricted fund balance minimum, it shows $17,720,510. That number should be $19,720,000 because of the $4 million in natural disaster funding. We originally had $2 million in natural disaster. That's why there's $17 million in there. But we had updated that to $4 million once we looked back at the previous expenses related to the boardwalk. So that number should be 19, which gives you the 1,233,000. That figure there is accurate, the 1,233,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Debbie?
The only thing, Debbie Angus, 58 Columbia. Okay. When you're raising anything that's going to affect residents, trying to do too much in 1 year isn't really good. So if you're going to go with a 28% increase in your water, and then I don't even know what you've discussed on property taxes. As a resident, I look at the cost of myself here. I'm getting a 28% increase in my water usage, if that's what you vote on, correct? With the sewer, it's the sewer, not the water, the sewer.
Okay.
It's basically the same. If you look at your bill, if it's $100, you get paid $100, whatever. Mm-hmm. Property taxes, I don't even know what you've discussed as far as how much you want to increase it. I agree with Commissioner Sharp that we need to readdress what the needs are of this city and how to get it done adequately. I believe the police force needs as much help as they possibly can get. I think the fire department needs all the help they can get. I don't even know how the manager of this place operates sometimes because there's just so much going on. But if you have a plan, you can fool around with it and find ways of doing it. I know Jay spoke that he doesn't want to put out a lot of stuff and get more sponsorships, but I remember years back, one year, we didn't have enough money for the fireworks, and I believe Main Street took over that and asked for donations, and we came up with the best fire display I've ever seen, and everybody in the city came together, from $5 donations to $1,000. Every business benefits for every event you have at that bandstand, every pizza joint, every bar, every Friday and Saturday night. There's no reason why they can't start putting a few coffers into that. It's not like you're putting up banners everywhere and advertising. It's just good business for them. And it helps. It helps with his bottom line and trying to get people to help communicate what's going on here. I was in marketing years and years, and we always looked for different ways. I represented the Washington Caps. We had a bottom line. We had a budget every year, and we couldn't go any further than what we had. And we looked for sponsorships that didn't degrade our product. It enhanced our product. And I think we haven't done enough of that. That is my opinion in looking at your commissioners. I don't know how you can possibly come up with a budget this year or next year without raising something. But be careful on how you do it, because then people get a little annoyed. Everybody's working with X number of dollars. Inflation is still there. And I think this is a beautiful town, and we want to keep it that way. But I think we have to look for other revenues, ways of coming in to help subsidize some of these events we have that bring people into town and bring money in. But that's all I have to say. And be careful on how the percentages are done, because I think as a resident, I get a little annoyed. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Carolyn?
Carolyn Diefendorfer, city resident. I just want to say I'm probably in the minority. I think our property taxes are too low. I think we get significant services here that, yes, I used to live in Newcastle County. I paid a lot more. I get a lot more services here. So I think property taxes is a place to look. That's just my opinion. I'd rather pay, honestly, higher property taxes than the higher sewer, but that's just me. I do think we get a lot for our money here, and I think we need to keep that in mind. The other thing that, Tony, I'm like you. There are monies that have been collected, and I get what you were trying to say. There are monies that have been collected in this fiscal year that get used for next year, because we haven't used all of our funds up. And so something that you have to pay for on April 2nd, your money came from this current fiscal year. So I get what you were saying. I mean, there's got to be something in the checkbook to pay those expenses on April 2nd, April 3rd, whatever, because your quarterly bills that have gone out haven't gotten paid yet. So I get what you were saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Francis, come ahead.
Simple question. I want to go back to something that was said earlier about the metered sewer, the sewer. That, I understand no meters in Dewey, Henlope and Acres, North Shores. I would like to ask the question, has the city ever estimated what the average amount a homeowner actually pays for the sewer in those areas versus, say, the average? I mean, I know you can't do it, it's averages. But I just wonder again, has the city ever estimated based on, or ask the county again, or like that, you know what the bills the homeowners are getting for sewer in those three areas, North Shores, Dewey, and Henlopen, and are they paying their fair share? I
Well,
mean, I know you calculated, I wrote down how you explained about it's the operating cost of the plant and that, you know, what they, then the flow and all that, but has there ever been a rough estimate of what it ends up being?
well, the county has a rate per EDU that they charge their customers. They have a much larger base than we have. I mean, we only have 3,400 housing units in the city of Rehoboth. So what the county actually bills per quarter on a flat basis is $82.50 per EDU to their customers.
Okay.
So somebody in Dewey Beach is paying $82.50 a quarter for sewer. If for one EDU. Now, a restaurant or a business establishment that has a lot higher usage, they'll pay a lot more. But if you have a single-family dwelling, which would be one EDU, you'll pay $82.50 a quarter.
And do you know offhand what the average sewer bill is then to a homeowner in Rehoboth?
It's a lot higher. I mean, I pay it. I paid over, I think my water sewer bill was over $700 for the June through August billing period, but that's because I have irrigation and there's water in there. I don't really recall what the breakdown is, but I do know that I am paying more than I would if I had a home outside of town on one EDU. Now, I will qualify that there's certain developments out there that have debt associated. Beachfield, for example, has debt associated with it, but so there are some places that are paying more, but assuming that there's no debt or anything, other additional costs, your operating costs, your monthly bill for sewer is going to be $82.50 quarterly.
So is that fair?
Well, it's because of our structure. I mean, we decided.
But can't we charge more for the, can't we charge more for what we're doing? Or is that set by the county? I mean, can we, okay, we can increase our water bills and thereby increase also our sewer bills. Can we increase what we're, or is it prescribed that it has to be this 40, well, the operating cost of the plant, the percentage? I mean, are we restricted?
We'd have to go back to the county and revise the agreement. Now, the agreement that we have with the county was established many years ago. We're basically following a cost allocation practice. It's been in place for many years. I think if you went to somebody like the county and you said, well, you're using 50% of the flows, but we want you to pay 80% of the costs, I think they'd resist that. I think that the idea of billing, allocating our costs based upon the amount of flow that each community uses is arguably fair in the eyes of most people. And I think that the one thing that the county has that we don't have is they have mass. So they can spread their costs over a wider base than what the city of Rehoboth can.
Yeah, it doesn't seem right that it's our sewer plant and that the people in Henlopen and Dewey and that end up paying less, I'll just say, for their sewer than we do.
Well, you know, I think it's hard to disagree with you on that, but I don't think that we have a real basis of argument to shift a higher percentage of the cost to the county if they're using, if we're allocating the cost that we have to operate the plant based on their percentage of usage.
Thank you, Bert. Thank you, Francis. Evan, what is your ultimate goal here on this draft presented fund policy? Are you
Sure, Mayor.
asking us to adopt it in the future?
Not necessarily. Again, this is something that the city's talked about year over year, and we haven't yet been able to put together. So I wanted it to be really an introduction to, again, a framework. You know, I think an important thing to mention is that this is using FY24 figures, so the FY25 budget would certainly change the fund balance, the amount in excess of minimum fund balance, all of those numbers change annually. So the fund balance net position policy is exactly that. It's a policy which sets out a framework in terms of how much, you know, in simplistic terms, I guess, how much the city needs to have in its savings account to plan for operating expenses, debt service, capital improvement plans, and natural disasters. So the figures we've included just to kind of help educate how this policy looks from a number standpoint, but really the policy itself is just a framework for the commissioners to consider. So that's, again, I'm not really looking for any type of approval on the policy just yet, but wanted to at least start the discussion on the framework.
All right. And do you have any guidance for us on what you would like to achieve in this meeting, out of this meeting, so that we can have a balanced budget by the end of the budget meeting number 5?
Well, I think on the second page of the support document, again, we tried to identify some revenue increases as well as the expense reductions to help balance the budget. If everything was implemented that we had accounted for or presented on that second page, we would have a deficit of $40,000, which I think Bert and I could easily find by going back to certain accounts and reducing some of those expenditures. One thing that comes to mind is the administration has a contingency fund, which is, again, a fund used to plan for or have monies available for unexpected expenditures. So we could reduce that contingency by the $40,000 and balance the budget. But again, these are all just for your consideration. You know, I think I've sort of articulated a path forward here in this document, but certainly we're open to comments or considerations from the commissioners on what you'd like to see at the next budget meeting.
Evan, what happens if on this page 2, which I actually love this because it's so simple to follow, or I thought it was before I started speaking. What happens if there's a line that's added to this that says X number of dollars from our savings account? What if it said $500,000 from our savings account?
I think that would,
Could that stop all this before my head explodes?
it could. I think it depends if you are wanting to keep in the contributions, then yes. I think if you wanted to keep in the contributions, again, we're showing a deficit of $435,000. If you retain the 80/20 health insurance, budget 15 seasonal police, that would do it.
But you're effectively, that would be, even though you're saying where you're going to take the money from, you're really creating a deficit.
And so what?
That's not how you make a budget.
Here we go again.
Okay. But that's, I'm just saying, you propose something that's likely to happen. And if you're going to say that we're going to raise taxes you raise the taxes enough to be able to cover your expenses, or you reduce the expenses,
No,
for
I'm saying we leave our taxes the way they are.
Okay, leave the taxes, okay, and I'm just saying, and if you're short revenue, you have to come up with other sources of revenue to cover it. And a fund balance is not, you're borrowing from yourself. So you're really not.
And I will replenish myself.
Well, you didn't say that.
I did. I asked it earlier, and Evan answered yes.
Right.
You're not listening.
All I'm saying is, like, in order to do that, it's not. I'm just saying, you can do it. You can do it. but that's not really the process of creating a balanced budget.
If you
That's
think
all.
I'm going to vote for a property tax increase just because it's not the way to actually do it,
Well, all I'm
that's
saying
delusional.
is, no, all I'm saying is, if we vote the property tax, that it's probably pretty accurate that we're gonna bring in that money, right? You know, I mean, I'm just saying, certain things are predictable, like highly predictable, like transfer taxes, not predictable. I mean, kind of predictable, but not as predictable. But certain things, if you're gonna raise the money, you're gonna raise it.
I don't want to raise the money.
Okay, all right, so you don't. But all I'm getting at is a lot of the things on the expense side are not so predictable. So you really don't know if you're going to spend, you may spend more, you may spend less. It's just a matter of coming up with a scenario that has a reasonable possibility of happening. And then we approve that. That's really all we have to do. Okay?
But that same theory, if you apply it on the revenue side,
Yeah.
the only fixed revenue is property taxes for the most part.
Yeah.
Every other is based on user.
Yeah.
Parking, permits, rental tax, sewer, all of that. So that is all
Yeah.
can go one way or the other. What I've been listening intently here. If the 435 is what we're showing as a deficiency at the moment, potential, and what I'm hearing from a couple sides here is that the property tax increase is not something that we want to approach this year because we've already increased or potentially increasing the wastewater metered price. So if we would plug that 435 with the 850, that would give us a larger potential deficit of $1,280,000, which if you kind of look over to the fund balance, our excess in minimum amount is $1,203,000. So that's like $50,000. Now I know that's what you're saying, Bunky, is this is apples and oranges in some way.
No.
But this is the minimum fund balance is, I would equate it in my mind to a homeowner's the reserve fund, and you have to be prepared for the roof leaking or the elevator breaking or
Right.
something of that nature. So that's what we're looking at, this 19,720. But we have actual expenses and costs to incur to properly resource our community that we could sort of bring this back to zero in a sense. The money's there, but it's committed elsewhere, except for the $1,233,000 at the moment. Am I making any connection here to anybody?
I mean, we are talking about $40,000, are we not?
About that.
Okay. We can do that with your contributions, if you so choose.
But something else I want to
Yeah.
throw into the equation here, the property tax that we're looking at, we completed a reassessment in 2014. Okay. The county is currently working on a reassessment. The county taxes that we've been paying are based on 1972 or 1976 equation, something way back there.
I think
Anyway,
they're about right, 72.
it's
I think
not
is-
recent, okay?
Yeah.
So I think that the change in taxation that we're going to see from the county, even though you've got to have a net neutral, I think, the first year. Is that correct?
Correct. I don't know if that's a requirement, if that's a requirement, but I mean, that's usually the objective.
Practice.
They're just going to shift the burden from west to east.
Okay.
Basically.
So there's going to be an adjustment in our county taxes.
Yeah.
And that also then leads, in my mind, the property assessments that we do citywide versus property assessments that are done by the county, which probably may be two different numbers, which then we will have to go to investigate or justify. So I'm leaning that, in my mind, the tax increase would not be appropriate this year because of also influenced by the county assessment coming. Is that
I'm not sure when that county rate will actually take effect.
Well, but isn't that beside the point?
I mean,
It's
they're-
coming.
Well, it is coming, yeah,
Definitely.
a
It's
year or
coming.
two.
Yeah,
So,
So is a stormwater fee.
yes.
Right,
yeah.
right. Thank you.
Bert, can I ask you, the money that they're earning on these short-term investments that you're making from, is that pretty locked in?
Well, U.S. Treasury bills is where the money's invested. We have about 23 million that we originally invested. We made over $1 million on that investment. The problem with that is, you know, the yield curve for is kind of shifted the wrong direction. In other words, you're getting more money on your short-term rates, your 60, 90 days. So we sort of hit a sweet spot. The 10-year bond's not yielding as much as a 90-day Treasury bill. So we're very fortunate, but it's unlikely that this is going to continue. It's, you know, I'm not an economist, but I mean, you usually don't see short-term rates higher than long-term rates. And so this is sort of a honeymoon that we're on right now with these 5% interest rates for short-term debt.
Right. Okay.
With the potential to go from 21 to 28% increase for wastewater metered sewer, I've been contemplating a property tax less than the 8.5%, 8.5 cents per hundred, such as 7.5% or something, to do it incrementally. I don't know if anybody's interested in a partial increase. I mean, that
I'm not. My goal is 0 property tax increase.
well,
And the question is how to get there.
then I'm
It'll be hard.
Because
I think
I must
property
be
owners
candid, I must be candid about, we've got grants down here to the tune of $395,000. And I have already had constituents say to me, you better not be funding these grants and increasing my property taxes. So let's just get down to reality here. Because all this discussion is going to fall on deaf ears with our constituents, and I believe rightfully so. This is not for them to understand. It is for us to slog through with my head exploding and serve them up a very understandable position. So we still have to grapple, in my opinion, with this $395,000 and whether or not we can fund a portion, all or none of it this year, just to be blunt.
sounds like nobody believes the property owners through their property tax should pay for any portion of increases in medical fee and increased wages and any other services that they get.
Not until, Mayor, you're cherry picking for your talking points. But what I'm saying is, and I keep saying it over and over again, not until April, when I believe we get our house in order so that tourists, commercial, and homeowners at that time be considered for what's the big picture for the next 5 years. That's what I'm saying, if that makes any sense. So don't cherry pick just a few of what my goal is.
Because my rough math without the county assessment is that we're looking at over $1,000 increase to our homeowners based upon what we have on the table. Between water, stormwater, property tax increase.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, considering all.
And we've raised parking $1.
And I resonate with the fact that it feels like and it appears not equitable. And until we get equitable, I don't know why, if we have a savings account that can be accessed one time.
How do you know it's going to be one time?
Because I'm living in the present. And that's the situation we have right now. It would be a
We're
one-time.
not going to do it next year?
I have no idea. If we get our house in order, we shouldn't have to do it next year. Because we should, during those discussions in April, we should already be anticipating what's going to happen with pension contributions, what's going to happen with health care increases. We do this stuff 12-month at a time, and it results, to me, as you can tell, in a huge amount of frustration after 9 years of doing budgets and feeling like we never actually get out in front of anything. Maybe it's my misperception, but until this feels equitable and until I could justify giving grant money to anyone, it all falls apart for me. And maybe that is illogical to you.
I didn't say that.
But just maybe.
No.
It may feel illogical.
No.
But I'm trying to look at this from an everyday homeowner, their expenditures, and trying to anticipate what I would call predictable costs for our property owners for the next 5 years, not for 26, just for the year of 26. Because the other pieces to me is we have to get serious about whether or not we're ever going to do projects like streetscape on Baltimore, Wilmington Avenues. What's the reality of that? Yes, they're in the 5-year plan, but really?
We'll have a meeting on that.
Yeah. So it still feels incomplete to me, but the situation has already shaped itself up for me for this fiscal year budget. Could y'all please say something?
I agree with you. I'm in line with you and your line of thinking. I said from the very beginning I was against raising any property tax because I think based upon all the other fees that I see us adding on to the homeowners, it's as far as I can see, as I did the quick math, without the county assessment, it's over $1,000. And I think for a 1-year jump, I totally agree with you. If a homeowner is getting $1,000 additional fees or taxes, whatever we want to call them, and then we're saying we're going to give grant monies or something else, it doesn't, the optics are wrong.
Right. Comes down to optics.
The optics are wrong.
Yeah, totally agree.
But Commissioner Bennett, that's only 2 of us.
No, I'm in agreement with you. I think
Okay.
that to look at it in long-term planning, in the sense that we, whatever you want to call it, there is the rainy day fund, the reserve, what have you, that we have available to us through financial planning over the years, thank you, Bert, that this could be done without a major impact to the residents. The increases that we see of parking meter rates, parking permits, and rental tax all fall into either tourist or commercial categories of affectations, if you will. And then the water meter rate goes back to residents. But I also think that the other pieces that we're here looking at potential, but we've all agreed that will go into the budget, are the additional staffing levels. I think, to me, that benefits everyone, but it certainly benefits the residents more with police protection, communications, and again, we can't control health insurance. I don't think we'd like to anyway.
So, gentlemen, are you able to update this based on this conversation and seek a balanced budget, I guess including, for now, these contributions or excluding them? Let's see, add, reduce.
I thought there were certain ones we weren't going to change.
No, well, certain people have made some opinions known, but we haven't talked about.
Well, I mean, you know, Lewis is also talking about a fire protection fee.
That's on our docket, but it won't be done for this year.
I know. To me, this is part of the April discussion, that we've got to get our house in order.
It's another fee.
You talk about planning for the fund balance policy. I think we got a bigger issue in planning and projecting our budget revenue for the next 5 years.
Right. So I'll go back to you, gentlemen. Are you able to glean enough from this conversation to go back and tweak the budget and make it work? Right?
I don't know what you have to tweak. Help me. Somebody, what are we tweaking?
So if I could just have a little bit of clarity. So for the expense reductions, do we want to keep in the 80-20 health insurance split and keep in the 100% employee? We don't want to go back to the 80-20 health insurance, and we do not want to budget for the 15 seasonal police. If we could have some guidance on those two things, that would probably be helpful.
On the 80-20, I was very vocal that it was a recruiting and a retention tool. That was before I knew. That was at the 17% increase, not a 28% increase. So I would love to still stay on the 100% for the employee only. But then that would need to carry on for years to come.
Correct.
And maybe that would be ill-advised without knowing how bad these trends are going to be. I'm a bit stunned about going from 17 to 28, to be honest. That's a heavy lift.
So but just so I understand, you're saying no increases in property tax this year at all?
Correct.
Okay.
I've only said it like I don't know how many times.
Well,
but yeah,
okay.
I'll say it again.
Okay, thank you.
My goal is no increases in property taxes this year.
Okay.
Because we do not have our house in order, in my opinion.
Okay.
And is there agreement on 21 or 28% on wastewater metered sewer?
I've already weighed in on that.
Would you like to repeat that?
Sure.
Thank you.
I am supportive of 28%.
I was 21.
I believe Bunky was 28. Mayor was 28. I'm 28.
I was actually waiting, but I think 28 is going to be the number.
What were you, Patrick?
I'm the lone guy out.
Tony.
And then
Tony Bennett over
you
there.
wanted confirmation of budgeting for 15 versus 20 seasonal police?
Seems to what the chief is realistic with.
Right. Okay.
And retaining 80-20 health insurance across the board.
Unfortunately, yes. I hate that. What's the differential? Evan, do you know it off the top of your head yet? Of how much more it would cost to, I hate to backpedal here, but I'm just wondering if it's a
250.
We have 245,000.
245.
250, 245, yeah.
But then you'd have to, you can't give a benefit like that and then snatch it back.
No.
I don't think.
Francis?
You know, and property taxes are deductible for most people if they're itemizing deductions.
Okay, so just real quick, if I could, Mayor. So 28% increase in wastewater metered sewer, retaining the 80-20 health insurance, and budgeting 15 seasonal police. That's what I have. Okay, thank you.
And the jury is still out on contributions.
Well, you know, at previous meetings, I did say out loud that we would be taking that up at the next budget meeting. I probably made a mistake, probably should have said we would do it at this meeting so that we have a better idea of what the end result is. Francis?
I would like to say that I would be very upset if the commissioners took away the 20% of the medical benefits to our employees, that I think I just heard the number 245K, and then gave 245K as donations to nonprofit organizations, I would feel just as upset about that as any raise to my property taxes. And I think the 28% raise in water, you've heard from two people, I mean, in a way, that can hurt more than a property tax increase. And to me, it's all together. It doesn't matter. I mean, it all adds up. It all comes to what it is. And, you know, I don't see you guys ever taking away the increase in that water. And I will say our water costs here in Rehoboth are way higher than up in Newcastle County. And we just heard that our sewer is way higher than our neighbors who we're servicing. So I don't see any, I mean, that's just to me crazy that we would pay out, we would take that benefit away and give it to nonprofit organizations. That's, again, I'll quote the charter. The charter goes over and over again saying that you collect taxes for municipal purposes.
Thank you, Francis.
Well, Francis, I just don't want you to be misled. Our employees currently, the share is 80-20. Right. We were thinking about going up.
No, and that's
okay.
What I'm talking about. That is what I'm talking about.
I got you.
I would be upset if you actually now don't continue on with what you've said for many times about supporting the 100%, because, well, that's what I
got you. Thank you.
Let me ask commissioners this. When we get, whether it's today or whether we defer it to the March 15th budget meeting number 5, when we get to the discussion of the contributions funding, do you intend, do we intend to allow those groups to talk? Or is the talking and presentation over with, so it's up to us?
As far as I'm concerned, it's over with.
Because if you believe that, then maybe we should have that discussion today. Up to you. I'd prefer to get it over with. Except that we only got 4 or 5 commissioners here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the agenda is broad enough we can do it. However, I would like to prefer to put it on the agenda and defer to the next time. So, but again, I mean, we know this. I'm going to have to emphasize to the absent commissioners that emphatically that's our last session.
Well, I'm not going to sit through, because of 2 commissioner absences, retreading everything we've just sat here and done. So
they're going to watch it.
But the
so that's what I mean by
contributions. So, you know, they need to come prepared and
okay.
And I don't think it's a lengthy discussion, frankly.
Well, there is no discussion from anyone other than the commissioners, because we have had presentations, we have had documents requested by December 1, either received or not received.
Well, then let's discuss it now.
And we know,
so that we can give him direction.
Well, you're the one who said you hate it without 2 other commissioners, and I don't discount that uneasiness.
Yeah, no, let's wait. Let's wait.
But I do agree with Commissioner Sharp. I'm not going to play Groundhog Day
Nope.
with going over all this because the 2 are absent.
Well, I'll agree to deferring the discussion on contributions to budget meeting number 5. However, it puts a lot of burden on the city manager to have a balanced budget, depending on that outcome, within an hour of finishing the budget meeting and going into the regular meeting, so. Anybody else? I think we've had a long enough day. Is there any last word from members of the public? Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Francis. Thank you, Carolyn. We appreciate y'all coming. Do you have any follow-through? Evan, do you want to finish with anything before I ask for citizen comment?
I don't think so, Mayor. I mean, I think, what we can certainly bring back at a future meeting, the fund balance and net position policy. Just briefly, the net position for water and wastewater kind of track with the general fund thinking. The only, I think, big difference is instead of accounting for 60% of expenditures, we account for 50% of operating expenditures, only because those operating expenses are much less fluid compared to the general fund. So certainly the commissioners and the public are welcome to read over the draft fund balance policy, net position policy, and we'll bring it back at a future meeting for further discussion.
All right, thank you. Anything else? Warren? Just state your name and relationship to the city.
Warren Jones, Vice President, Rehoboth Beach Volunteer Fire Company. Hello, everybody, again.
Hello.
I just want to make sure I have something clear after listening everything that went on here. So what I'm understanding is when these two gentlemen come up with a budget, and we're not going to consider and you call us a nonprofit, but according to the charter, we shouldn't even be in that category. That means if this budget is passed, we're wiped out.
No, that is not what it means.
Doesn't?
No.
Okay. That's all I want to know. So because you're not going to let me speak next meeting.
Because we already understand your position as an
Okay.
essential service.
Okay.
And you and I have had an eye-to-eye about this fee.
Yes, we have.
Yes, and my remarks about I'm sick and tired of the fire department using your word as well to have to come and beg the commissioners every year. We need to figure out what we're going to do for this year, and then we need to figure out what we're going to do in the next 5 years. And I see a combination of levers that we can pull, but your statement that you're wiped out from us, that is not accurate at this point.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Warren. With that, no other business. I'll adjourn this meeting at 4:32 p.m. Thank you very much.